It's go time. Welcome to the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Blondin. This is the reality sports betting podcast. And what do I mean by reality? I'm talking. You're listening to the podcaster that lives the real life like you do when it comes to sports, thoughts, opinions, arguments, disputes, and sports gambling. I live the roller coaster that you do. This is why you turn into this show, because this is real. I am not a pro. Do I want to be a pro? You're goddamn right I do, but this is the reality. I'm going to share with you my ups and downs of the average day better, and I know that's what you are. And we know the struggles, and we know the ups and downs, and the adrenaline pumping, and this is what this podcast is all about. I like to say we have a couch and an opinion, and I'm going to goddamn well express it on here. So welcome back, everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody who is loyal listeners to the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast. And for those that have not joined us before, you're in for a good show here today. We're predominantly going to focus on the NFL and props, but we're going to touch base on some stories from some other sports in the world of sports. So we're going to get it going here. You can follow the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast on X at Overrated EXPER2. That's Overrated EXPER2. You can find out more show information on the link in the episode details. Check out previous episodes. Check out last Tuesday's episode where we went over the point spreads and over-unders for some of the plays in the NFL. And also provided our top 8 Super Bowl reality picks that we think when we look in February, the top 8 teams ranked who we think are going to actually be real contenders for the Super Bowl. It may surprise you who we take, and it may upset you, but I don't care. That's just the way it's going to be. And if you don't like it, jump on Twitter and follow us. Instagram, Facebook as well, Overrated Experience. You can follow us there. We're a growing podcast. We're trying to grow things here. And here we go. So as we kick off the Christmas break, again, I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody out there who's listening. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I thank you for following. I wish you the best and hope you get some time down to relax. And you know what? There's a lot of action going on. A lot of action heading into the weekend. If you love your soccer, action. If you love your football, oh my God, there's a lot of action. We're talking, we got the Thursday night football game we're going to dive into and give you a little insight, my opinion a little bit. In this game, excuse me, a lot of football, a lot of NBA. Obviously, NBA did own Christmas Day, but now the NFL's got 3 games playing on Christmas, so we got a lot to go through here. Got a lot to go through, and you got a lot of bankroll management to deal with. So let's do this. So just to talk off the top about some of the things going on in the rest of the world that's not the NFL. Well, some of the stories that stand out to me, at least when I find my notes here, are if you like soccer, like professional football. I'm going to talk about soccer. If you follow what's called European football, so get with it. That's the way it is. Is not a lot to go on right now, but I talked about on Tuesday that the Champions League was going to have a new format. And if you don't know the Champions League, it's a great idea. It's basically the top European leagues send each season almost like it is exactly an in-season tournament of the best of the best. The NBA is currently trying to copy this. That you've seen the Lakers win the in-season tournament. It's basically trying to copy the Champions League and some of the other European in-season tournaments. And it's the best of the best on best, so it's an amazing tournament. The format was going to expand, and the format was going to change on how teams got to the knockout stage. But suddenly now it's been scrapped. And part of that is the announcement today. There's a court ruling where the European Football Federation's UEFA could no longer control the idea of putting together a Super League. Now, what is a Super League, you may ask? Well, this is probably the North American influence and outside money and non-traditional soccer fans honestly trying to ruin the world of football. And when I say football, soccer. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of my Corona. So the Super League was proposed, I think, a few times now, but the last time there was a big revolt. And the idea is to bring the top teams out of each of these divisions. We're talking about like Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and put them into like a North American style, league. Kind of like the NFL's the best of the best. That's hard. The NFL's really not duplicated around the world. So let's use the NBA or the NHL. Let's use the NHL. They'd be like bringing the KHL teams and the NHL teams and together, and kind of a North American format where you don't have relegation, which is one of the fun features of the sport. And economically, it makes sense for these powerhouses, but in essence, you're really degrading and destroying a lot of what makes European football and club football special is the layers and layers of leagues and under, these smaller teams that go on a run and move up divisions. That whole idea is threatened by this concept of the Super League. And when I say this, I know some way, somehow, these billionaires, endless funds, they're going to make it happen. The world's going to change. And it's a shame. I mean, the romanticism of what European football is, it will eventually, I don't think it's going to be a quick turnaround, but eventually, the smaller clubs that have dreams of playing the Manchester Uniteds, the Man Cities, the Bayern Munichs, they're going to be eliminated. That idea is going to be eliminated. And, generationally, this is what carried football or European soccer. So it's not good. Okay, no, it's not good, and watch out because it's going to change the world of football. And if you didn't realize it already, sports in general is all about economics. The folks that are buying these teams, fewer and fewer, if any, have any interest about the sanctity of the sport itself. So I buy a team. Let me use an analogy. So when George Lucas sold Star Wars, right, to Disney, and then also Disney bought the rights to Marvel. The idea was they were going to spend a lot of money, right? But they were going to make changes that triple, quadruple, 20 times, whatever, put more money in their pocket. And the danger is, do you disrupt it enough where you ruin, the passion, the idea of what the idea was all about? Some could say Star Wars, as far as the product itself, has declined, right? I'm sure they're making money over backwards at Disney on Star Wars. Marvel, you can't argue that investment was probably the opposite of Star Wars, and absolutely amazing what they did with the storyline. With Tony Stark and Thanos and the Avengers and all the Splinter movies. But is that eventually waning? So European soccer, I think you're dealing with a lot of danger here of too many people tinkering around with things they don't know. So we'll see where it goes, but I just don't see a positive here. That's my story on that. That's my soapbox. MLB, interesting, proposed, as you know, heading into the 2023 season, where we've seen the pitch clock introduced, and you know what? It worked. It was a benefit to the game. I can't imagine going back and watching a game that did not have the pitch clock. So what the value of the pitch clock was, you didn't notice it. As soon as the season started, games were played. There's a little more pace. Positive addition to the game. A lot of risk, but positive to the game so far. Now Major League Baseball is trying to tinker, move it a little forward. We'll see if it works. With some interesting changes. Because like everything else, as the season goes on, teams manipulate the existing rules you've put in place. And one of those rules they're going to change or tinker with because of that manipulation is the pitch clock with runners on base. Pitchers at 20 seconds, it's going to move down to 18 seconds. And that was apparently because, from April to September, the length of games on average grew from 2 hours and 36 minutes to 2 hours and 44 minutes. That's one change to try to save more time and also adjust to the teams adjusting to the change. The runner's lane. So if you notice between home plate and first base, there is kind of two lines going down to make sure that the runner stays in the lane to make sure, to not interfere with the play. So it's going to widen by 6 inches next season, and the idea gives more of the runner to stop them from, let's say, zigzagging and put themselves in a situation where they may interfere, be called for interference. And also now fewer mound visits, which is pretty interesting. So the number of mound visits is going to shrink from 5 to 4, but at the same time, there's an exception made in the ninth inning where they can have a mound visit. The thought was teams would purposely use the mound visit not necessarily to consult with their pitcher, but to prevent a pitch clock violation. So interesting there. Baseball's got to push it, adjust it. Players got to buy in. All right, don't tinker with it too much. Okay, but I think these moves make sense. And again, you have to adjust because coaching and analytics adjust around the rules you put in front of them, and they manipulate it's almost like law. Like, you have a loophole, corporate lawyers are going to find that, or tax or accountants are going to find loopholes to bank the profit based on what was written, and you got to kind of close it up. So that's what baseball's trying to do. So interesting there from Major League Baseball. Don't you miss baseball too right now? I mean, honestly, the best thing about baseball is the highlights. Every night, you want to see guys smashing home runs, great plays. That, to me, is what's missed on baseball. The highlights. And we talk about the Pistons. The Detroit Pistons of the NBA lost their 25th game tonight. In a row. Talk about garbage right now. They are one game away from tying the record. And surprisingly enough, man, I guess not surprisingly, the 2010-11 Cavs had 26 losses in a row. And the 2013-14 Sixers, trust the process, had 26 losses in a row. And the Pistons are 2 games away from breaking that record. The NBA is tough. If you go to the full rebuild, you might have some crippling years. I guess that's not a question. You will have some crippling years. And if you miss those LeBron drafts, or the top end guy drafts, the franchise trades, you get screwed over in the lottery. You got a lot of time to wait, and you might push away a generation of fans. So the Pistons, you have the Pistons right now that are totally jacked up, absolute embarrassment. Who the hell is going to go to downtown Detroit willingly for a team that's lost 25 in a row? I don't know. And then you got a Lions team that's on the upside. So you're going to have a generation of people that follow the Lions, and you're going to be stuck with your hardcore Pistons fans. But that might be crippling going forward. It just might be if you don't get out of it. So the Sixers, as an example, they had the whole trust the process. Joel Embiid, couldn't get on the court fast enough. Injuries plagued him. Obviously now an MVP in the NBA. So they've recovered, right? They're a contender. There's a reason to show up. And if Detroit does not draft well, and there's a wave where they got to go back and rebuild a second time, this franchise is in trouble. Big time. Big time. The Detroit Pistons, one of the most well-known franchises in the NBA. The bad boys of the NBA have resorted to this. 25 straight losses. How horrible is that? And as I turn my back, I'm watching the Thursday night football matchup between the visiting Saints and the LA Rams. let me get the latest on this, but it's pretty much been Rams the entire game. There was almost a fluke where the Rams are up 10-0. They miss a field goal. New Orleans comes back, makes it 10-7 on a deep pass by Derek Carr. And then, and that just stands out to me. I don't know if you've noticed this many times throughout the NFL season. A team has an opportunity to kind of put a stranglehold and keep the momentum going. And a missed kick that shouldn't be missed in the NFL in 2023 totally turns things around and provided New Orleans an opportunity to come back. But then again, New Orleans, they are who they are. They go for a 4th and 5, I think it was on the 46 or 47-yard line. They don't make it and do the exact same opposite, providing the momentum back to the Rams who score a touchdown before the half ends. And from that point, the Rams have pretty much taken over. But when you look at the Rams, and I buried them a couple weeks ago. I don't think Sean McVay is as good as people say, but he's proved me wrong in the last couple weeks. Matthew Stafford's been hitting his weapons, which is exactly what he needs to do. I thought he was a statue back there. This team is revamped. Are they really a Super Bowl contender? I don't think so. They got a lot of weapons and can make some damage maybe in the first round, but they're not taking out San Fran. I don't even think they're taking out Philadelphia, even Dallas. It's not happening. They're a wild card team at best. Their Super Bowl years are behind them. But I must compliment them. Cheers to the Rams on your run of recent. You're about to go 8-7. Probably make the playoffs. And then you got the other side where the New Orleans Saints. This team has tons of weapons on the offensive side of the football. But you have a maestro back there as your quarterback, Derek Carr. What the hell? Brothers. Derek Carr. He's not a fit. He just does not match what this team needs to do. And I thought that would have gone away, 3 or 4 games into the season, but he still looks uncomfortable. He still looks frustrated. He just doesn't feel like his software is applicable to whatever they're running on offense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. And the biggest mistake New Orleans can do now is decide that Derek Carr is their guy. I thought he would have been a great matchup. I'm not going to write Derek Carr off. He might fit well into another system. But whatever New Orleans is doing, if they keep Dennis Allen as head coach, it's not working. And when you got a guy like Alvin Kamara, whose prime is just pissed away right now, it's such a dominant player. Olave, right? It's just a lot of weapons on that side where even a manageable quarterback that can just get the ball out of his hands quickly, I think you're going to see more success. Derek Carr, it ain't working. It's time to go. So those are my thoughts on Thursday Night Football, but what are you here for? Well, you're goddamn right. You know what it is. It's Props Thursday. Props Thursday. We got 7 plays for you. We were 3-4, 3 wins, 4 losses last week. We're trying to recover. I don't know why things went south the last 2 weeks. We were crushed 2 weeks ago. Couldn't pick a winner. We had a few bad breaks, last week. We should have put us plus 500. We didn't. Can't cry about it. It's the way it's going to be. Oh, by the way, I can't remember what podcast it was. I played a clip from A Christmas Story, or The Christmas Story, and I referred to the bully in there as Scott Farkas. It is Buzz Farkas. That is a mistake I made, and I'd like to correct my editorial. It is Buzz Farkas. Farkas, last name, Buzz first. We got a lot of football action Saturday, Sunday, and Christmas Day. Probably the biggest matchup on Christmas Day, Ravens, 49ers to end the week 16. Here we go. We're going to start off on Saturday. We got a big matchup, 7-7 Ravens. Steelers taking on the Bengals. Bengals are going up. The Steelers are going down. But what do we like here? Look, Jake Browning's passing total is at 232.5. I mean, what am I going to do when I see that? I look at a Jake Browning total, 324 last week against Minnesota. Coming off a 275 against Indy. And then 254 against Jacksonville. He even threw for 227 in his first full game as the Cincinnati Bengal quarterback playing against the Steelers. I see a 232.5 for a quarterback. It's jacked up passing yards the last 3 weeks. It's hard for me to turn that down. So I'm going to go with the over 232.5 for Jake Browning, our boy, Jake. But also, something stood out to me. I usually don't do back-to-back same game parlays on the podcast. In life, yeah, hell, I'll bet anything. Sure, what the hell. But I looked at Jake Browning's passing touchdowns for this game, over a touchdown and a half, plus 140. And I said to myself, he's done this 2 games straight, and he puts the ball in the air, and he's got a lot of weapons. Plus 140 is a damn good value for a guy that does throw multiple passing touchdowns. So let's do it. Second pick, Jake Browning, plus 140. 2 touchdowns in the air. Goddamn right. Now we move on to the Saturday night game, which should be a blowout. The Buffalo Bills take on Easton Stick. What a stupid name. Fuck. Who the sorry, I'm going to go off this. Who the fuck named their kid Easton Stick? Like, really? What the hell? I'm sure there's a story behind it. I'm probably offside on this. But Easton Stick? Come on. This kid got the shaft. Anyway. I was debating here. I looked at James Cook. Has been having a monster. A monster for like 4 or 5 weeks. Passing and receiving out of the backfield. Is exactly what the Bills needed to kind of take the pressure off Josh Allen. And the over-under for his total pass receiving and rushing yards is 102.5. And I initially came on and I said, you know what? I'm going to take the under. And I was thinking, maybe I'm thinking too much. I was thinking that at some point, maybe even by halftime, the Bills are going to be thinking, I cannot put my starters on the field in a game that's already over because we need all hands on deck in every situation for every scenario for the rest of the season just to make the playoffs, much less to be a Super Bowl threat. So the only reason why I was thinking under was, these guys being sat at some point before the fourth quarter. And then I look at, the numbers and just the way that James Cook is terrorizing. He might reach 100 yards, 102.5 yards by, the first half. And I'm not gonna hang my hat on a under on this. So I switched it. So I'm gonna take the over receiving and rushing yards, over 102.5 yards for James Cook. I'm doing it. He's going to do it. Can Easton stick around and keep this game close to keep James Cook in the game? We'll see. I doubt it, but we'll see. Detroit, Minnesota, Lions on the road. I mean, they're really, honestly, if you look at the standings, they're really only threat to the 49ers, as far as that number 1 seed goes. They're 1 game behind the 49ers, and they're the only team that's behind them that doesn't have a loss. Like the Eagles and the Cowboys both have lost the head-to-head matchup. The Lions have not played the 49ers, so we'll see how that goes. And I got to hope the Lions win to keep the 49ers interested, to keep gunning against the Ravens on Christmas night. But what I like here is I see a line again of Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, Detroit Lions, 49.5. He's coming off a 100-yard game, 66 before that, 60 yards before that, 54 before that. And if you watch the Lions, they're becoming a 2-headed monster in the backfield. Montgomery, Gibbs. And Gibbs gets about 10 to 11 touches a game. And he always, at least in the last little while, has a 30-plus longest rush, which pretty much takes the big chunk of what we need in this total. So I like him. I'm going to go back to the well like I did last week. Gibbs is my guy. He's going over 49.5. Now, here's an interesting one. I thought, let's look at the Green Bay, Carolina. Now, Carolina is horrible. And I can't believe that Atlanta choked on something last week. Absolute garbage. And lose to the Carolina Panthers, who win by 3 field goals against 1 touchdown. How pathetic is that? Now, what I did notice, here a line that I thought stood out to me. So Bryce Young, who ain't looking too good right now. Don't write him off yet. The team's terrible. Coaching staff was terrible. Everything was terrible for his development. So I'm not writing off the Alabama quarterback. He's a winner. But what I noticed here was that his pass attempts, I don't care about completions, I don't care about yards, his pass attempt line is 28.5 pass attempts on FanDuel. I look back and I think, well, yeah, he only had 24 attempts against the Atlanta Falcons. But if you look at that game, when the Panthers are in a game, right, they're gonna be more inclined to run, to be safe with the ball, right? Remember, they got nothing to lose because they don't have their first round picks, so they're not interested in necessarily losing or taking the foot off the gas when the opportunity arises because it's going to save their draft status. That's not the case. But in this case, Bryce Young, 28.5 passing line or attempted passes. Yes, he did not make that total against the Atlanta Falcons, but I'll tell you what, the previous 12 he did. I'm going to go backwards. So before last game against Atlanta, he had 36 attempts, 31 attempts, 31 attempts, 29 attempts, 38 attempts, 34 attempts, 31 attempts, 38 attempts, 41 attempts, 32 attempts, 33 attempts, 38 attempts. Right? You can't tell me that Green Bay shouldn't have a comfortable lead where it forces Bryce Young to go to the air. And this guy is the king of the check down. 2 yards here, 2 yards here, 3 yards here. Failed incompletions on third down. Forget third and long. So I love, and I think this is under the radar, pass attempts over 28.5 pass attempts for Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. Now we're getting to the sweet spot of the schedule. The Dallas Fraud Cowboys, who got pasted in Buffalo. And apparently they have, 15 guys sick, apparently? Ooh. Head to Miami to take on the Dolphins, who are banged up. Tyreek Hill, I don't think he's going to play. He could. He's not in the props to go. I think he's questionable still with that ankle. So what does this mean as they head into Miami? Interesting matchup because obviously the Cowboys have an opportunity to potentially be division winners. The Miami Dolphins are chasing the Ravens for the first overall seed in the AFC. So it's important to both teams. They're going to be coming ablazing. And I looked at, obviously, if you look at Dallas, you look at CeeDee Lamb right away. You look at Dak Prescott's passing yards because this team likes to be offensive. On the road, maybe it's a different story because they're not at home on the turf. But what stood out to me, and I thought was undervalued, which I believe I'm going to take the value, is tight end Jake Ferguson. 42.5 yards of receiving. Yeah, he had 44 receiving against Buffalo, but everybody sucked against Buffalo. So I'm going to take that as an outlier. Previous 2 games before that, he had 72 and 77 yards receiving. His targets are going up, at least 5 to 6 targets a game. And you can notice that CeeDee Lamb's targets are going down because Dak's spreading the ball around. And I think Jake Ferguson is his new favorite toy to play with out there, as he's scrambling. Jake Ferguson. There's 2 Jakes I've taken bets on. 3 bets involving a Jake. 2 with Jake Browning, 1 with Jake Ferguson. So over 42.5 yards for Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, San Francisco 49ers game. I thought this was a weird game to look at. What do the Ravens do stacked up against a defense like San Francisco? Can they move the ball? How do they move the ball? I talked about on Tuesday, I could see the Ravens making a run in the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise me if Lamar had his year this year and the Ravens, with Lamar and Coach Harbaugh make the run. But they are banking on how Lamar Jackson plays, like he like being perfect. So he's like a fast car that can perform better than anybody else, but the risk of crash is very high. When it's on, when it's going, when it works well and you don't hit anything, you can't stop it. And if you watch the way the Baltimore passing offense at least looks, it's a lot of time in the pocket that I don't know necessarily the 49ers are going to be allowing Lamar to sit back there and go up, back, down, low, break these tackles. He's got a unique skill set, which is something you don't see since the days of Michael Vick. So it'd be interesting how this works out. Now Mitchell, running back, tore his knee up. He was a young stud that I think helped this offense and not necessarily rely on Lamar, who had the rush for 90 yards or whatever. Yeah, I think 97 yards, whatever it was last week. So when I'm looking at a play in this game and I see Lamar Jackson's yards at 56.5, I got to imagine what separates the Ravens and a unique skill set that they have to take into San Francisco is the legs of Lamar Jackson. I got to believe he's going to be pumping once, pumping twice, having nobody, and he's going to take off out of the pocket more than we think, and he's going to get his yards. I think the 49ers are okay with that to an extent, as long as they control the clock and they control the lead. So give me Lamar Jackson over 56.5 yards at minus 114. I think he is going to be banking on his legs, and he knows that they need this win to keep ahead of the Miami Dolphins, who they play next week. So look for Lamar Jackson to be on the run in the Christmas night extravaganza. Well, there you have it. You've listened to my voice long enough. It's been about 32 minutes of acoustic pleasure for you. And of course, the pleasure's been all yours. So as the Overrated Experience rolls out for another evening, I'll say Merry Christmas to you and your loved ones and your friends and family. And I thank you very much for joining us on every episode we post. Please set us to automatically download our podcast. The support is always warranted. And again, I stated earlier, Overrated Experience Overrated EXPER2 on Twitter. We enjoy the support. The Overrated Experience is over and out. Good night, everybody.